Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Dee and this is Dee's Atelier. In today's video I'll be showing you how to make this bubble skirt, which is also called a balloon skirt. It's a mini skirt actually, so if this is something you're interested in learning how to make, kindly keep watching and let's get into the video. If you are new here, please subscribe to the channel, and if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for sticking with me. To begin this tutorial, we are going to be drafting out the patterns on the pattern paper. So I have with me my white pattern paper, my crepe fabric of about 2 yards, my elastic and my measuring tools. You can make use of any fabric of your choice for this style, but I'll be making use of this crepe material. 2 yards will be just fine. Before you start drafting the patterns, make sure your paper is folded, one side closed and the other side open, and then go ahead to draw a straight line for the starting point or the waistline. So the length you are going to be marking for the skirt length is the actual length you want the skirt to stop at. For mine, I want it to be at 18 inches. So I subtracted 5 inches to give me 13, so that I'll use that for the fold of the balloon. You can use 4 inches, you can use 3 inches, depending on how much you want to be folded in. So this pattern is going to serve as the lining. I'm going ahead to add 1 inch for the sewing allowance, which made it 14 inches. I took out 1.5 inch as well on the waistline, so you can see where my tape is starting from. Go ahead and mark 14 inches all through and draw a straight line. The next thing to do is to insert the body measurements. You are going to be dividing your waist measurements into 4, and whatever you have, you are going to place it on the paper and mark it. So at the end of the day, we had about 9.5 inches. Place it there and mark it. After doing that, the next thing to do is to insert your hip line. So your hip line is from your waist to the highest point of your hip. For some is 7 inches, for some is 8. So for this, we are going to be using 8 inches. Go ahead and mark your 8 inches and then draw a straight line if you will, but I didn't do that. So make sure that on your hip line, whatever you have is your hip divided by 4 inches. So you have to make sure that whatever you get has to be wide enough to contain the hip. The next thing to do is to draw a straight line from that point and then open it downwards like you were making an A-line skirt. Normally, if it were to be a normal skirt, a dart would have been there, but for this, we are not making any darts on the skirt. It's simply just going to be an A-line skirt without darts. So now, because we want the skirt to be freer than usual, we are going to be adding extra 2 inches by the sides. So whatever you measured initially, go ahead and add 2 inches. And then I added 1 extra inch for sewing allowance. So it made it a total of 3 inches. I went ahead to insert my allowances and I drew a straight line to connect all of them together. To the next step, by cutting out the pattern piece. So for the back piece, we are going to be using same pattern. There's no zipper anywhere except joining by the sides. So this is going to be the same pattern we'll be using for the back piece as well. After cutting out the back and front pieces, the next thing we're going to cut is the fabric we're going to use to gather on the skirt. So for the length of this, I'll be making use of 19 inches. 19 inches because I added 5 extra inches to the length of this, so that it's going to give it like this lining effect by the time we fold it in by 5 inches. So 1 extra allowance for sewing. If you would like, you can make use of 3 inches, 4 inches, depending on what you want. So for the width now, that's the full width of the fabric, I multiplied my waist measurement times 3. Whatever I got was what I used to fold my fabric. So if you want to do this, you can multiply by 3 or 2, depending on how full you want the gathers to look at the end of the day. Now this is done we're going to move over to the sewing aspect. As you can see, this is what it looks like when I open it up. This is the front and back piece after cutting, and this is what it looks like when placed on each other. I'm going to go over to my machine and stitch 1-inch sewing allowance on each side of the skirt. So as you can see, it looks like an A-line skirt, and this is what you want to get so that the skirt doesn't end up too tight on you. So yeah, let's go ahead and sew the edges, or rather the sides, with 1-inch sewing allowance, and I'll show you what I got. After sewing in 1-inch allowance, this is what the skirt looks like. I've given it a good press, I turned it inside out, and I ironed it properly. So the next thing you want to do is fold it into two, and then on the upper side of the skirt and the lower part of the skirt, you give it a notch so that you know where you're pleating to, and your pleats will be even while you are doing the pleating. So yeah, go ahead and give your skirts notches. I went ahead to pick up the fabric we're going to be using to pleat, and I folded wrong sides facing wrong sides, and I'm going to stitch with about 1 inch as well, or half an inch. I'm just going to close up the fabric so it ends up like a complete circle without no opening on any end. So I'm just going to close that, and then we'll move over to the next step. Now that this part of the part we're going to be pleating is closed, the next thing we're going to do is open up the skirt piece. So for this, we're going to be turning it right sides facing right sides, and then the wrong sides facing the wrong sides. We want the sewn part to be the clean, has to be the inside part of the skirt. So I'm just going to place like so, and then I'm going to pleat one end of this the bigger fabric around the skirt area. So if you like, you can pin it on every side before you begin. I'm starting from one of the points where I notched, so I'm going to make sure I pleat evenly on all sides so that I don't have some parts fuller than some. After doing that, I'm going to show you what I have. So let's go. This is what you get after pleating it all around. So we are going to gently flip it over to the other side. This is how it looks like on the wrong side. I'm going to flip it over to the waist area, and then I'm going to sew a loose stitch on the waist area. This loose stitch is what I'm going to gather and then stitch on the waist area so that it's going to hold. So I'm just going to be doing that for you to see. Using my machine to sew like the freest stitch ever, and I'm sewing that with about half an inch from the upper part of the fabric. So I'm going to do this all around, and then we're going to draw the gathers to fit the waist exactly. Simply pull the gathers out as lightly as possible to avoid your thread from cutting. So I'm going to hold one end, and I'm going to keep pulling it till I get the exact waistline measurement that I need. And then after that, I'm going to go over to my machine and stitch it down so the gathers remains in place while I fix my waistband. This is what you get after pulling your gathers. So now go ahead and arrange it properly. Make sure the part you sewed the first time, that's the part you pleated the first time, is facing inwards, so that by the time you are done with your skirt, the inside is clean. So I'm simply going to arrange it so that in such a way that the waistline is equal with the gathers, and I'm going to place it on my machine and sew. So guys, after holding it down the waistline, the next thing on our agenda is to cut out the waistband. So for that, I'm going to be making use of the exact waistline measurement. That's for the length. And then for the width, we're going to be making use of 5 inches, so that by the time we sew half inch inwards on both sides, we are going to be left with 2 inches showing on each side, which is 4 inches. So go ahead, cut out 5 inches and the exact waistline, plus half an inch for sewing allowance. After that, we are going to close up the band and then stitch on the right side. So for context, it depends on how well you can stitch your band. You can start from the wrong side so that by the time you are stitching on the front, it's not rough. So this is what I did. I sewed on the right side. You can sew on the wrong side so that by the time you are stitching on the right side, you can sew directly on top to avoid mistakes. But if you are good with your stitches, you can use this method and just simply sew on the other side as well. So after this, I'm going to just fold it in, and then as you can see, I've already ironed it. You're going to be passing an elastic through it, so you don't need to iron your interfacing. So I'm simply going to fold it inwards and then cover where you see those rough edges. I'm going to cover it with half an inch all round. So I'm going to do that to my machine and then leave some parts open where I'm going to pass my elastic. So after sewing it down, that's the waistband, the next thing is to insert the elastic. So for this, I'm making use of this white elastic, and I subtracted 6 inches from the actual waistline. So it can be smaller than that, it can be bigger than that, depending on how tight you want the waistband to be. So after everything, I even regretted using this length. I would have made it a little bit more shorter. So after doing that, you want to use your safety pin to pass this elastic through the waistband and make sure that it's standing straight. So once you are done doing that, you are going to stitch the elastic on one end, like double stitch on it so it stays properly, and then close up the waistband. So that's what I'm going to be doing now. So once we are done with this is all for the skirt, and this is what the final result looks like. So if you don't want an elastic, you can make use of the normal waistband and insert your zipper at the end of it. So this is what the inside of the skirt looks like. If you remember, I said it's good to have inside clean. So yeah, that's basically all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned one or two things, please leave a comment. If you have anything you want me to work on, also leave a comment. See you in my next video. Bye.